All right, folks, it is time to do the weekly video. It is more than time to do the weekly video. I've been trying to do the weekly video for a couple of days. You know what? I'm going to turn the lights on because we're a few minutes away from sunset, and we're 25 minutes away from sunset, and then that whole thing is going to turn into a saga, and we can try and avoid that saga. Now that I've started to do a reading, who knows what ambient noise is going to filter through this open window. It was 90 degrees in Los Angeles today, 90. September the 23rd, God help us. It's supposed to be 90 degrees again tomorrow, God help us. And there's the dog a few miles away barking. Anyway, whatever. Hi, everybody. So, as weeks go, as far as the aspects are concerned, we've got actually I think it's a pretty important week. And I actually think that we're coming out of a pretty important time. The aspects made by the transiting planets over the next week are for the most part, pretty positive. But we are in the middle of the eclipses, right? We had a lunar eclipse on September 17th, and we're heading towards a solar eclipse on October the 2nd. And for me, so far, all said and done, I have to say, it has been a relatively quiet eclipses. But I also know that for some others, I'm talking about people who have lost all their possessions in a fire. I'm talking about people who've heard about the mortality of a parent. Eclipsy things are still around us. As I've said, different eclipses hit us in different ways. This particular eclipse, however, quiet as though it might be, for those of us it's quiet, there's also something very definite, and it's not over yet, I hasten to remind you. October 2nd is the next one, so at least till about October 9th or so, we've got to be present to what it is that this eclipse season might be bringing us. Now, just very briefly, as you know, I was doing these $50 30-minute single topic readings, and they're still available, but the price is higher, so you can always inquire about that. And I'll get to that when I normally do at the end of the video. But I have decided that I'm going to keep some sort of a $50 30-minute offering available, and I'm going to start to make it around certain topics. So till October the 9th, the topic is eclipses. So if you are interested in a 30-minute reading related to how the eclipses are affecting you and your chart, then you're welcome to reach out to me. The email address is below, and request that particular $30-minute $50 reading. Okay, I'll do a separate video on this tomorrow, but just since we're talking about eclipses, I just want to get that out there. So if you're interested in how the eclipses, the lunar eclipse, the solar eclipse, the eclipses moving from the Aries Libra axis to the Pisces Virgo axis, what all of that means, has meant so far, means where we are currently, where it's heading to, then I know that I can cover that in a 30-minute reading with a certain amount of time for Q&A at the end, and $50, 30 minutes, that's there. Okay, let's get back to this week. As relatively benign, and quite frankly somewhat exciting, quiet or not quiet, it's still, I'm going to explain what I mean by why I think it's such an important time we're in. And I would say that time started right after the eclipse almost, is when these aspects started to become exact. And I've talked about some of these aspects before. You know, I would say all of last week until about Wednesday. And especially the next couple of days, we may really be coming out of the other end, coming out to the other end of the lunar eclipse. The aspects being relatively benign and relatively positive is one thing. And some of them give this particular week a certain importance that I will get to in a second. But keep in mind that no matter what, we are still in this kind of eclipse period, eclipse portal. Now, for a few more days, we are going to have, I would say, as we head towards this weekend, all of this week, again, could end up being really, the energy is still with us for it to be a relatively productive week. by the middle of the week, we'll end up with the last quarter of the moon, and after that, the moon is going to get darker and darker and darker. But really, I would imagine that it would most affect the darkness of the moon would most start to affect our energy, and we would start to feel depleted and tired and sleepy and not quite so productive and not quite so energetically active by the weekend. So we've still got this week to try and knock a few items out and get things done. Quite frankly, it's because I've been kind of in my own way. I haven't done it consciously. It's because I've been sort of harnessing or feeling some of the energies that I'm going to talk about in a second. And because, as I always say, the week after a full moon is energetically always probably the most productive week of the month. It's what's caused me to, I actually wanted to get this weekly video out on Saturday, and it's now Monday evening. So be that as it may be, I hope things are productive and hopping along for you guys as well. And that you're thinking of new offerings and thinking of keeping your world and your life exciting and interesting and keeping it going. Here is a summary of the aspects of this week. Yesterday, and this I covered last week, but just to give you a sense of where things are, let's actually first do this. Let's do a recap of where the planets are. We've currently got the month of Virgo still active. And I define a month being derived from the word moon. I describe a month related to sign as starting from the new moon of that month to the next new moon of the following month. So the month of Virgo for me started on September 2nd and ends on October 2nd. So we've got the month of Virgo still active. The personal planets by now have moved out of Virgo. Not entirely. Mercury is still in Virgo, but is on its way out. So the only planet that is currently still in Virgo is Mercury. And actually, I'm ready to kick Mercury out, but Mercury being in Virgo right now is probably making some of the most important aspects tomorrow and day after of this week. So we've got Mercury in Virgo, we've got the Sun, the South Node, and that's it. The Sun and the South Node in Libra. We've got Venus in Scorpio now. We've got Pluto in Capricorn. We've got Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. We've got the North Node in Chiron still in Aries. We've got Uranus in Taurus, Jupiter in Gemini, and Mars in Cancer. Okay? You remember a time not too long ago when all the planets were in Pisces and Aries earlier this year? Well, it felt like all of them were. They weren't really, but certainly between Aquarius with Pluto and Aquarius, and Pisces, Aries, and Taurus, we could account for just about all the planets except for the South Node. And look where we are now, 6 months down the line. So we're still the month of Virgo. So activities related to the house occupied by the sign of Virgo continue. You are welcome to, and you may find that you are putting finishing touches over the next week over activities related to the house occupied by the sign of Virgo. Mercury continues to be in Virgo, and the first set of transits yesterday on the 22nd is when the Sun entered Libra and Venus entered Scorpio. The first of the transits for this week is tomorrow on the 24th, when Mercury in Virgo trines Uranus in Taurus. And then the very next day on the 25th, Mercury opposes Neptune in Pisces and trines Pluto in Capricorn. And on the 26th, Mercury moves into Libra. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are Mercury days. Tomorrow on the 24th, Mercury trines Uranus. Day after, on the 25th, Mercury opposes Neptune and trines Pluto. And then the next day, he moves into Libra. And it remains important because as we head to the end of this week, on the 28th, the Sun in Libra conjuncts the North Node. On the 29th, the Sun, I swear to God, this whole video, my slips of the tongue and my brain, and I'm starting to realize why now. Whenever Mercury and the Sun are about to get together, and Mercury is getting more and more combust, we start to see Mercury retrograde light kind of stuff appear, because Mercury's losing its power, getting ready to have a cup of tea with the Sun on September the 30th. Anyway, so on the 28th, the Sun conjuncts the South Node. On the 29th, Mercury conjuncts the South Node. And on the 30th, the Sun and Mercury conjunct in Libra. Now, on the 29th, we have one more aspect, which is, in my opinion, lovely. Mars in Cancer trines Saturn in Pisces. So as I said, we've got Mercury trine Uranus, Mercury trine Pluto, Mars trine Saturn. These are three wonderful, wonderful, wonderful aspects. Yes, we have Mercury opposing Neptune. And yes, we have these conjunctions to the South Node, which we would expect to have, considering we have an eclipse on October the 2nd. An eclipse of release, a South Node eclipse in Libra. Of course, we're going to have the Sun conjuncting the South Node, and Mercury is close by behind. So that is to be expected. But then we have that Mars-Saturn trine. Now let's start to, 10 minutes into this video, let's start to give you the interpretations that count and that matter. When we talked about the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces, I talked about the fact that at the time of the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces, we had Mercury in Virgo opposing Saturn in Pisces. We had the full moon lunar eclipse conjunct Neptune, which meant that the Sun was opposing Neptune, but we also had this trine of opportunity, an awareness of opportunity with the Sun trining Uranus and Pluto. And those trines became exact, including the Sun opposing Neptune, after the eclipse. So the eclipse was on the 17th, the full moon lunar eclipse. Mercury opposed Saturn on the 18th. On the 19th, the Sun trined Uranus. On the 20th, the Sun opposed Neptune. On the 21st, the Sun trined Pluto. And then the next day, the Sun moved into Libra and Venus moved into Scorpio, and here we are today. And tomorrow, Mercury, which is getting closer and closer to the Sun, starts the same three aspects, makes the same three aspects that the Sun made last week. Trining Uranus, opposing Neptune, trining Pluto into Libra. And then a couple of days later, both the Sun and Mercury conjunct the South Node and then conjunct themselves. And all of that happens by the 30th, and on October the 2nd, we have the new moon solar eclipse in Libra. When I talked about us, even today, as I do this video on the 23rd of September, being in an important time, I really think that somewhere we have now had enough of the status quo. I've talked to you about the fact that the Aries North Node eclipses, which continue to be current and exercise their influence all the way to the end of the first week of June of 2025, put a carrot at the end of our stick and wanted us to move in a direction, or certainly created that North Node hunger, desire, oh, wouldn't it be great if adventure, or this is the right direction, or this is what I want to do, this is where I want to get to. Created that kind of feeling, that intimation, all the way back in April of 23, intensifying into August, September, and then all of a sudden, by the time we got to September, October, it was like, you can't move forward, I need to move you back because I need to give you an awareness of everything you need to release first, before you can head in any direction you want to head in. And that was roughly between September, October 23 to the end of March of 24. And for some people, the January 20th to February 20th time period could really have opened things up, freed up some bonds that were holding people back. And then we entered after that into April, Mercury retrograde and eclipses, which again, I think gave us a sense of, okay, we can still think about moving in the direction that we've talked about moving in or thought about moving in. And as I said to you, May, June, and July were forward movement months, but not in a way that got us to any firm or clear destination. And then we went into the Mercury retrograde in August, and we dealt with the Mercury retrograde. Here's what is real, here's what you can rely on, here's what you can't rely on. here are the timelines that are more realistic. Here's where you're building castles in the sky. Here are the facts. Let's readjust our plans and our timing. And then starting September 2nd, as I've been saying to you, we entered about a 9-odd month, strangely enough, 9-10-odd month birth canal, birth period that now actually takes us from where we are currently to where it is that we want to be by the end of the first week of June. With the understanding that there are going to be lots of backs and forths. September, October, till Thanksgiving, till November 22nd or so is still forward movement. Then we head into a Mercury retrograde in Sag. Then we head into a Mars retrograde in Leo and Cancer. Then we head into Venus and Mercury retrograde in Pisces and Aries. And only then, by the middle of April, can we feel like, okay, I think I can see the light of where it is that I need to be in a way that I can feel relatively comfortable with it and comfortable about it. And by the end of the first week of June, we reach some sort of stability around it. My biggest advice with regard to where it is that we are heading to is don't get too attached to what you think the outcome needs to look like and how things need to occur. With the North Node and with the eclipses, as I've said to you before, eclipses promise more than they deliver. The North Node eclipses and the North Node in general. But part of the reason why it does that is that it creates the yearning and the desire for us to lean in a certain direction and develop what we need to develop to move towards what it is that is right for us, the next right step, the next step in our evolution. But because the North Node has this kind of hunger, desire, calling, what is in our heart, it can also create this kind of delusional, magical expectation of, oh, this is going to happen next, and this is going to happen next, and I will really want this, and I really want, and it's just like, it's not that you can't move, it's not that that can't happen, it's that the point is that the North Node is saying, move towards these visions that are being created. But the likelihood that the actuality is going to be these visions is going to be dependent on how evolved we are with regard to what we're doing and how we can get out of our own way and how we can get to something in a grounded manner. Keeping our bank balance in view, understanding what our financial and emotional security needs are, how we're actually going about taking care of things, how stuck we are, how unstuck we are getting ourselves, how we can move towards what it is that we want, etc., etc., etc. So as we move towards the direction we want to move towards, as symbolized by the North Node eclipses in Aries, the last of which is going to occur on March the 29th of 2025, which takes its influence all the way to the week before and after May the 29th, which is why I keep saying the end of the first week of June. Don't get too attached to what the outcome looks like. Honor what the North Node may be presenting to you as this ultimate vision and start to move towards it and build towards it in a grounded manner. And see what that gives you. It may not be that choices are always binary. If someone feels like, well, the North Node eclipse is where I feel like where Aries is, it's asking me to do this, or it's asking me to do this, or it's asking me to move here, it's asking me to explore this. It doesn't just have to be moving. It doesn't have to be that the final destination is just, it's either A or Z, or it's either P or Q. It can be some combination. You don't know what that ultimate thing is going to look like. Because ultimately, as you explore whatever those vistas are, it wouldn't surprise me at this point in time, a year and a half after March, April 23, the first of the North Node eclipses, it wouldn't surprise me if you have some sort of an awareness of wherever it is that you want to go, what some of the issues might be there. And an awareness of those issues allows you to operate creatively in your best interest. So try and get clear on what the North Node in Aries has been encouraging you to move towards. Understand that that vision, that call, is the direction that you should move towards in a grounded manner, effectively. And let the final outcome, co-create the final outcome. Don't just buy into it as an outward manifestation of kind of what the picture is in your heart of what the North Node eclipses are showing you. And as part of that, we, of course, the October 2nd solar eclipse is on the Aries-Libra axis. And just like on October 14th of last year, on October 2nd, we have our next solar eclipse of releasing something in the Libra part of the chart that will allow us to move towards the Aries part of our chart. And that is effective from October 2nd to December 2nd. So we are soon going to get we're going to get clearer on what is it really that needs to be released, so that it is no longer knowing what it is that actually needs to be released and what it is that we are planning to release is going to give us a clearer and a better sense of what this final outcome might actually look like, that we can expect to start to show up or give us some sort of sense of results. So what has been gained or what has not been gained, or whatever it is that the eclipses are, whatever changes the eclipses are trying to get us to make for our evolution and growth by the middle of April to the end of the first week of June of next year. So these eclipses of release, October 2nd onwards, allow us to enter a time when we continue to actually make releasing in the Libra part of the chart more of an actuality, and through that process we get to co-create and realize what that final outcome needs to look like. So if we're releasing something, an attachment to something, or an attachment to how we think things need to be related to the Libra part of the chart, then if we're releasing something, we're kind of moving it out of our life, and we get to make some decisions around, well, is this going to be part of this final outcome, or is it not going to be part of this final outcome? All of this leads me to where we are at right now, and with the Sun trining Uranus and Pluto last week, and Mercury getting ready to do it tomorrow and day after, on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, the 24th and 25th of September. And the bottom line is this: whenever the Sun is involved, it's an internal awareness. And when Mercury gets involved, that internal awareness starts to move here. It can translate into communication, or it can translate into planning and thinking about. And why I think this last week and this week is what we've been waiting for on some level to really start to move. When we were dealing with the early part of September, as I mentioned to you, the new moon on September the 2nd was better than the August 4th new moon. Really, that dog, I really just, And now another dog. They're all agreeing. The reason why they're barking right now, if you can hear them, is because they are agreeing with what I'm telling you. That is what we shall assume. The new moon in Virgo was better than the new moon in Leo in early August, because at least Mercury was direct and had picked up some speed. But it was not still, Mercury currently is moving so much faster than it was at the beginning of September. And as I'd mentioned to you, the acceleration really starts in October and November, especially in October, with regard to moving in the direction that we want to move in. And because we're dealing with eclipses, these are going to affect us all in different ways. Some of us are actually going to see opportunities that create this acceleration for us. Some of us are seeing the eclipses affect us in eclipsy ways that are quite challenging, as eclipses tend to do. As I said, mortality or sudden, significant, massive shifts that force change, something being eclipsed in or out of our lives. Some of us might just be able to take it a little bit easy, but irrespective, no matter what, with the Sun trining Uranus and Pluto last week and Mercury doing so over the next couple of days, the opportunity is there to turn the key. The opportunity is there to acknowledge that we are actually done with the status quo. And even in the most benign of ways, if we are not dealing with some sort of opportunity that is starting to pull us forward in that Aries North Node direction, we ourselves I think, are at a place with these two sets of trines, the sun last week, Mercury tomorrow and day after, where we are done with the status quo and have been actively thinking about and will start to put into action as this week progresses, even starting tomorrow or day after, how we need to concretize and move forward with in the direction of the changes that we have been envisioning. We know so much more now than we did a year and a half ago with regard to what is it that we're trying to do and where is it that we're trying to go and what sort of a vision are we trying to move towards. We also know enough to know that it isn't as simple as, oh, just to chase after the carrot at the end is the stick of the North Node eclipse. There's a reason to move in that direction, but we remain open as to how to most effectively design the outcome for us. We may have made a couple of rasher goes for things only to find that the universe said, wait a second, you can't quite make this move just yet. You've still got to deal with what you need to release. And here we are, ready to make this happen with a certain amount of forward movement, an eclipse of release on October the 2nd, and then starting November 22nd all the way to the middle of April, a real back and forth, a real back and forth, a real back and forth, a real moving towards the future and dealing with the past, moving towards the future and dealing with the past, moving until we get to the middle of April, to the end of the first week of June next year. And this time, around September 23rd, it wouldn't surprise me if last week you, at the very least, got to a place where you had an internal awareness that you were done with the status quo and what you needed to start to do based on everything you know now and any dress rehearsals you may have had about moving in the direction that you want to move, knowing that the final outcome is not clear for a lot of us. But we still know what changes we need to make. And we now know that we can no longer delay on making these changes. And with Mercury getting ready to do the trines tomorrow and day after to Uranus and Pluto, either some of us are actually in communication over certain things like offers or opportunities that are going to take us and move us in desired directions, or else we are translating an internal feeling, which is what the sun gives us, to a mental planning, coordinating, communicating, time to get off my butt, time to move towards the direction that I want to move in, time to start making the changes that I've been thinking about, time to execute now in a much more decisive manner, knowing so much more today than I did a year and a half ago. I'm going to say I am talking about the collective. And that is what makes this week so exciting and interesting. Because I think for a lot of us energetically, whether the eclipses are loud and earth-shaking, shaking the ground beneath our feet, or whether they are softer, they are achieving their eclipsy purpose of saying, it is time to turn the page. And somewhere through this process, last week was an internal awareness, and the next few days may well find you in a place where, as I said with Mercury, it's either communication, if it's things that are manifest externally, it could be communications, contracts, transactions, or it could be on a mental level going, okay, I'm ready. I'm starting to make the changes that I feel I intuitively need to make. Here's how I need to put a plan of action in place. Here's how I need to start executing. Here's how I need to change my routine. Here's how I can actually start to effect the change. Some of it may have to do with how we plan things on a day-to-day basis and how we execute. This is very Mercury. It's very sixth house. It's very Virgoic. What tasks we take on a day-to-day basis. What are our habits? What are our patterns? How are we productive? Very Mercury. What are our plans? How are we going to get from A to Z? And then let Z define itself over the next 8 or 9 months as we get there, knowing that our own internal compass will guide us, knowing that we don't have to be so binary if it's not going to serve us. It doesn't have to be this or that. It can be some combination of this and that. But this, the status quo, needs to change. And even if we remove and unfactor out all the, is it the Aries eclipse? Is it this eclipse? Is it that eclipse? Is it this? Is it even the most mundane level? We are at that point astrologically where the key can turn so that the door can open to the next 9 months of change. Because the change has to be made at this point in time. Because you can just feel that the status quo, it's like an overripe fruit. There's nothing there anymore. It's done. It served its purpose. Now, we do have Mercury opposing Neptune. So this idea of a few days, a week after a full Neptune, the Sun opposing Neptune, we have Mercury somewhere. We have the opportunity to continue to get clear on whatever it is that has been going on in the sign of Pisces since 2012 that has been murky or deceptive, but to get clear on it in such a way that we can really... Mercury in Virgo needs to be put in service of dealing with Neptune and Pisces. So we may start to be becoming mentally clear about what is real and what is not real, given the fact that Saturn is also in Pisces right now, in the Pisces part of the chart. This is where things were deceptive. This is where things were problematic, but this is where they might not have been. This is how I might have contributed to it. These are communications that I think I need to do to set boundaries or to make structured plans around spiritual or artistic or creative or inspired directions that I want to take on in the Pisces part of the chart. This is where I can start to communicate in a more responsible manner, honoring my own sense of self-worth when I'm dealing with energies that are deceptive or not completely clear. Some of that may be in the mix of the next couple of days as well. Externally, it can be communication, actions being taken, transactions. Internally, it can be, because it's going from the solar plexus, the sun, into the mind, it can be, here are the actions I'm going to take. Here's where I'm starting to get mental clarity about what is real and what is not real. What is a problem has been a problem, but what may have been clouded in Neptunian nebulousness, because that's what Neptune does to loosen our bonds and loosen our attachments to certain things that often actually, in retrospect, may not be the right things for us or good for us. So tomorrow, Mercury trines Uranus. Day after, the 25th, Mercury opposes Neptune and trines Pluto. The actual experience of moving towards change shifts from an internal awareness that we're done with the status quo and we've got to do something to start to move towards this new direction, to how are we going to do it and to start to implement plans around it, communications around it, or in certain cases take advantage of offers and opportunities that show up that are that could be part of the eclipses for some of us. This is the week as it progresses, and even the next couple of days, where we might find that we are getting on the horse because we are done with where we are at. And the connection may have to do with finally moving towards these visions created by the North Node eclipses in Aries, but being open to the fact and being mature enough to realize that the North Node will create these fantastical images, some of which we may be able to concretize, but even if we don't, the important thing is to start moving in desired directions so that we can design the outcome that is best for us by the time we get to the middle of April. end of the first week of June of next year. And that does not mean for some of us that we may not find ourselves actually in motion and movement even in October, November, or December. As I said, by the time we get to December, it is a 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, which means that we need to know what it is that we're moving forward towards. So that forward, that culmination of what the Aries eclipses are presenting to us, for some of us may even start to show up in October, November, December. But in the process of starting to move towards something like that, we may have to get into serious action around releasing what we need to release where we're at in order to stabilize and concretize and completely be able to get to whatever it is that we're trying to get to. And the simplest way to look at it is just to recognize that we have been wanting to make certain changes all the way since April, May, June, July of 2023, and that the status quo is not yielding, is stagnant, is stale, it's not productive, it's done, and so now we get to move towards and create what actually has a sense of growth and opportunity and optimism and excitement and promise. Now, on the 26th, Mercury enters Libra, and then by the end of the week, we predictably get into eclipse land. The Sun conjuncts the South Node on the 28th. Even before we get to the eclipse on the 2nd, we start to come into a place of awareness of what needs to be released where in the Libra part of the chart. And we have already gone through the only complete eclipse cycle, and by that I mean where we have a solar eclipse and 6 months later we have a lunar eclipse in the same sign. The only complete eclipse cycle with a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse in the same sign on the Aries-Libra axis occurred between October 14th of 23 and March the 24th, 25th of 24 in the sign of Libra. We're not going to have that again with the October 2nd eclipse. We don't have a corresponding Libra full moon lunar eclipse in early 25, which means that the week before and after October 2nd and the week before and after December 2nd are going to, some of us may feel that October 2nd solar eclipse the week before and after December 2nd. But the key turns now. And as we head to the end of this week and the Sun conjuncts the North or South Node, and the next day Mercury conjuncts the South Node, there's a lot of awareness of what changes do I need to make and what do I need to release. That is a second go around when I can actually take strides to release things as a development of whatever was going on between October 14th, 23 to March 24th, 25th of 24. And on the 30th, the Sun and Mercury conjunct. The superior conjunction of Mercury and the Sun. So as this week progresses, expect Mercury retrograde things to occur. Mercury in and of itself will lose the power to the planning component. If you want to plan about how you want to move forward and what changes you need to make or you want to make in order to make your own ability to productively make the changes you want to make in your life, do it by Wednesday, Thursday at the latest of this week. After that, let Mercury and the Sun have their meeting and let the Sun download to Mercury after the conjunctions with the South Node what Mercury needs to do next. We are also at the midpoint of the Leo communication cycle. So if you feel that there are communications related to the Leo part of the chart that you really need to act on or make over the next week or so, feel free to make them. A lot of it may be on a mental level of assessing where you are at and what needs to get done. You might find that after September the 30th, as you head into October and November, October and the first 3 weeks of November, first 2 weeks of November especially, there's a lot more acceleration. And as Mercury and the Sun start to separate by, gosh, October 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, we'll even This is the week where the key turns and you start to think, what do I need to start to do to make these changes? By the end of the week, we start to get some downloads about what needs to be released. And we let the Sun and Mercury have the conjunction on the 30th. And after that, and after the October 2nd solar eclipse, and by the 4th or so, Mercury will be separating the Sun and the Moon crescent will start to become visible and our energy will return. And then it's acceleration time. If you are not dealing with out and out offers or information that are forcing changes on you, use the next couple of days to get clear on what you need to do with your routine, your habits, your patterns, so that you can more productively move in the direction that you want to move in. So that you are not in the same loop that you have been in. It's different loops, you know. It's as if since April of last year to March of this year was one set of loops. Then since March 24th, 25th of this year to the next couple of days is another set of loops. And we finally have the opportunity to move into a much more productive way of doing things and actually actualizing, actually manifesting, actually creating the changes that we want to make to start to move in the direction that we want to as a result of some of the aspects this week. Mars trining Saturn on the 29th of September brings us to, even though Mars does not go retrograde till December, Mars trining Saturn is the first of the aspects that Mars will make 3 times. And Mars is not yet at the degree that it's going to go over 3 times, because both Mars and Saturn are still at about 14 odd degrees. And I think the retrograde takes you back to what, 17 degrees or something like that? Hold on one second. I have that information here, surely. 17 degrees of Cancer, and we're not at 17 degrees of Cancer. But for all intents and purposes, you can think about the Mars retrograde starting to become effective, the Mars direct to retrograde direct starting to become effective this week. And that whole journey from now to June of next year, another now to June cycle, along with Jupiter and Gemini between now and June the 8th. So many things happen by the end of the first week of June. They're not related. They're separate transits, but they all culminate at the end of the first week of June. Jupiter cycle through Gemini. And once Jupiter enters Cancer and Saturn and Neptune enter Aries briefly after June, Jupiter finally will square Saturn for the 3rd and final time. We're still going to have another square on the 24th of December. Not something we need to look forward to, but we'll get there. Sure enough. Don't need to worry about it this week. Mars direct into Leo, retrograde December 4th, back into Cancer in January, direct February 24th in Cancer, back into Leo in April, in Leo all the way till June. That process starts this week. And the first of the aspects is a trine to Saturn. And trines give us this feeling of ease and flow. So if you want to take some sort of action in the Cancer part of your chart, pursuit of goals, setting of boundaries in a way that will help Saturn in Pisces stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, this is a week to do that. And with the Sun having opposed Neptune last week, the full moon lunar eclipse on the 17th of September, Mercury opposing Neptune 2 days from now, by the time Mars trines Saturn, because both Saturn and Neptune are in Pisces, and Saturn is trying to, if Neptune's influence in Pisces has been positive because he's been trying to get you to move in an artistic spiritual direction, Saturn is trying to concretize those plans. If Neptune's transit through Pisces has wreaked havoc in the Pisces part of your chart since 2012, but especially 14, 15, peaking in 16, 17, then Saturn is trying to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. And with Mars trining Saturn, there is an opportunity to, through action, pursuit of goals, boundary setting, be able to start this process and reach some sort of resolution and stability by late spring of next year. Because Mars will trine Saturn again, February 9th, April 4th. Mars will trine Neptune, October 28th, Jan 12th, April 19th. Mars will trine the North Node, November 17th, Jan the 2nd, April 8th. Now, for that, Mars will be in Leo and the North Node in Aries, except for the very last one, where Mars will be in Cancer and the North Node in Pisces, but whatever. 3 sets of trines. We do have Mars squaring Chiron. I'm less concerned about that, and thematically it all kind of fits in. But then November 3rd, Jan 3rd, and April 26th, we have Mars opposing Pluto, and those we cannot ignore. We can ignore just about any aspect except for Mars-Pluto aspects. Change is upon us. The nice thing about this week is that this is the thing that eclipses do for all of us, no matter how strongly we're feeling them and what is going on for each of us in terms of degree of the eclipse changes. They get us to be in the mindset of change. And this is the week, last week, heading into the next couple of days, when we get to a place of, okay, you know what, whether the eclipses are happening or not, whether anything is happening, whether it's not happening, I'm done with the status quo. This is what I need to do. I need to get moving. I've had enough. I need to start moving towards what I want to create. A better this, a better this, a better this, a more exciting this, and this is where I want, this is where I want, and we'll see what the outcome is going to look like, but I at least need to start moving towards what feels right and releasing what is dead weight. Don't be too quick to design the final outcome. You'll know what really is dead weight, and you'll know where you need to give yourself pause to say, will I need that? Let's just wait till the outcome. Make, you know, those distinctions, they're not that vague. So before Mars and all these planets, before the ground really starts to shake repeatedly between now and the end of the first week of June, at least now and the middle of April, take advantage of the energy of the time, and especially the next 2 or 3 days, to get our mindset, your mindset, my mindset, in a place where we are ready to cooperate with, and frankly, we are ready to lead the change in our lives in the desired directions that we want to take them and that we've been mulling over for a while. And if you say, I don't quite know what that desired direction is, all I would say is I think you might know what aspects of the status quo you're done with. So if you don't want to move towards a desired direction, at least start to move towards cleaning up, removing, eliminating what in the status quo is not serving your purpose. And it's not an overnight task. At least that's not what the astrology suggests. But it needs to happen. If you want me to do a 30-minute, $50 reading for you related to the eclipses in your chart, that's, you know, the vast majority of the last of the $50 single topic readings over last week and early this week have been about the eclipse. And so I was just like, well, let me just do an eclipse special then. If you want a 30-minute, $50 reading on the eclipses and how they're impacting you, if you want a 30-minute reading on any other single topic, if you want a regular reading, which is 60 to 75 minutes, that looks at everything in your chart, you can contact me using the email address in the description box below, and I can give you information about rates. There's a thanks button underneath this video. You can use that to contribute to the channel. Feel free to comment, like the video. It gives it more circulation on YouTube, you don't have to if you feel so inclined. And subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And next to the subscribe button, there's a bell icon. If you hover over that, there's a wiggly bell on top. If you click on that, you'll be notified whenever I do new videos. And if you found this content useful, feel free to tell others about it. I would appreciate it. Have a great week, and most especially, have a productive enough next 72 hours so that you can really be thinking about Mercury trining Uranus and Pluto. Either you are dealing with opportunities and offers and writing and all that kind of stuff, in which case it's clear and simple. But for a lot of us, a solar awareness of what needs to shift and change is trying to turn into a mental awareness of what needs to change and how it needs to impact our mercurial life. And our mercurial life is not just communication and information and data and chatter. It is also how we organize ourselves and how we utilize the 24 hours a day that we have 7 days a week to both execute on our responsibilities and execute on tasks that are helpful and productive and constructive to us, and also execute on activities that are important for our self-care, the right type and amount of rest, the right type and amount of, the right diet, the right movement. It's not about burning the midnight oil at 3 o'clock in the morning. In fact, if you use Mercury the right way, you shouldn't get to that point. It's when you don't use Mercury the right way that things pile up and all of a sudden you have to be up till 3 o'clock in the morning. So if you ignore trying to move to the status quo and make the change or whatever, the eclipses will bring certain changes anyway. Because I'm talking about things that you are already aware of that have served their purpose. And if you live in that space, the eclipses and the other retrogrades that are coming up will start to shift things around for you. The opportunity you have over the next 2 or 3 days is to mentally start to move towards whatever it is that you want to change and wherever it is that you want to go to, and start to see how you are going to change in the way that you live on a day-to-day basis to make sure that you can productively and harmoniously get to that place so that you're taking care of yourself and your own well-being, but also executing in response on tasks and responsibilities in such a way that they can actually get you to make the changes that you need to make in order to be in a more exciting, interesting, abundant space. So the next few days might allow you to think about how you're going to organize, how you're going to implement certain changes that open up your ability to create that change. And by the end of next week, and by the end of this week, we're going to be in eclipse land again, because on October 2nd, we have a solar eclipse. All right, I will leave it at that. More to follow in the next few days. I think next I want to do a video on the aspects the personal planets are going to be making as they go through Libra. Venus is now in Scorpio, so that should be interesting to contemplate it over the next few weeks as Venus goes through Scorpio and kind of creates her opportunities and blessings and workability and magic in the Scorpio part of our chart. That then, about a month from now, the Sun and Mercury and the new moon in Scorpio on November the 1st, 2nd will pick up on and develop. So it's early days from a Scorpio perspective for that, but we've got a planet there now. Right now, we are very much in eclipse land till October the 9th, 10th or so. And that's what we need to deal with. We need to cooperate with the changes, and we need to start to eclipse out what needs to be eclipsed out of our lives and eclipse in and create the opening to eclipse in what we want the eclipses to bring into our lives. All right, I will leave it at that. Thanks, take care.